Okay, so good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. So, you've been watching me discover what my purpose in life was, what I was trained for, my purpose in life, and there was no guarantee I would actually realize my purpose because there was so much jetsam and flotsam in my body, mind, and spirit that needed to be reconciled with and released, and then have my true intentions of what I was raised in to finally realize itself, to finally come to the surface, come into fruition. And I'll tell you, it's a lot of pain and suffering to finally realize what your purpose in life is. Not what somebody, well, here's the thing. It was given to me. But I was given so many different options of where to go. What do you mean where to go? So many different gifts and curses and spells that it was just a matter of which one was going to rear its ugly head or which one was going to be the most prominent and which one I was going to die in. Okay? And so when you've been programmed for academics, to be a wife and a mother and potentially a sex bomb, to be programmed to be an activist or a savior or, an underdog, well, it's difficult to be all of those. I mean, I may have exemplified, snippets and even periods of my life where I would exemplify certain ones based upon what was going on at the time. But at some point, with all the gifts and spells and the curses that were given to you and forced on you as a child, you really can't juggle all three of them. You can, but you will be so exhausted trying to live up to all those specific gifts, curses, and spells that eventually some of those gift, curses, and spells must go to the wayside so you don't destroy yourself. And what I have discovered is that I don't need to be a sex bomb. I could be a wife, but I don't need to be a sex bomb. I don't need to be one of those types. I could be academic and I don't want to be an activist because activism has its own crap that you have to deal with. And so what I finally now have come to terms with is, yes, realizing what my mother was part of, which was changing the world from being racist, imperialistic, and intolerant and extremely defined in gender roles to now developing tolerance and standing up for oneself, non-discriminatory, and also evolutionary / revolutionary. Now, I discovered a book that those in the conspiracy world who are right-wing were completely against. I mean, when I discovered the conspiracy world, it was Alex Jones. He is a very right-wing extremist. And not to say what he says has no credibility. Of course it has credibility. And from his point of view, and everyone that follows his point of view has a valid argument because there is change coming and not everyone's going to survive it. And there's intentions along with that change. But then while you're reacting to that and becoming conditioned to see that there is another agenda going on in the world. It's not just like, oh, everything is happy, happy, joy, joy. Then you have to understand why this agenda is happening. And it's not like my mom or anyone back in the anyone who was like in their silent generation or baby boomers are going to say or tell me what the agenda is. They'll have their own version of it. And even then, did the people back then in the 1960s, 50s, 40s, 30s, even 20s, how many people knew the full agenda and how that was going to manifest itself in the future in 2023, 2024, 2025? They were given certain pieces of the puzzle, given certain things to carry out, and they would make a nice life and have a great life, but also there's a bigger agenda that is also part of what they were carrying out in their lifetime through their industry, through all of that. And so anyway, so I discovered a book called Prairie Fire that was written by the Weather Underground. And I've been telling you about Weather Underground. I know we're in weather wars. I know it has everything to do with the 1960s. Okay? And Hollywood is part of the conditioning, the programming. And again, like my parents or anyone of the same cohorts, highly educated with their fancy degrees and their nice cars and big houses, Hollywood is no different than those who have PhDs and masters and bachelors in the sciences field and in engineering and tech field. And there's a programming along with that. I'm not now, but I've been exposed to the sciences field, the research and development, an orphan baby. We hear about the orphan trains back in the 1900s. Okay. We know that orphans happen all the time through war. Were they legitimately orphans? Were they taken? You never know what the deal is. We even people have speculated in Lahaina, children were taken, but there is no proof of that. Okay? But we know that children are the future. But what does that actually mean? Does it mean that your child is the future? What are you teaching your child? And so the system has a design, a blueprint of what they want the future to look like. And it does take children because people are dying off. The old world, the dinosaurs in our community, whether the silent generation or baby boomers, they are dying off. They're contracting cancer, disease, chronic illness, and autoimmune disorders. And it requires children to be designed and programmed for the future. Well, that potentially is through the orphan programs, whether it's legit or whether it's through war or through other means, nefarious means that people are also pointing out and speculating. And given I'm an orphan and I was trained in a very specific way, and I'm saving myself through all of this bullshit, it doesn't have to be bad to have orphans trained to carry the human race in a very specific direction. And some have been sacrificed. Yes, we know all about that. The indigenous people in Canada and America have been going through their own genocide type of stuff. But again, when you have so many people, and some are not evolutionary, their families are very non-evolutionary, what do you do? What is the system to do? I'm not excusing them, but I'm understanding both sides of it all. And given that I have a background in being an orphan, okay, from the Vietnam War, no less, then I have a little bit of a perspective that is valid. And so I didn't cover this yesterday because I had so much going on, but Hollywood is a reflection of the people. Okay, they were programmed to play a part. Now you have to discern the kind of part you want to play in this world. Now I have people from the past in the J world that I had as moderators or part of what I would thought be a business, and they're kind of coming back slowly. Some have come back, but they don't want to be noticed or anything, and I understand that, and that's fine. But again, I'm not trying to re-entertain the energy that is not really that different than before. People don't really change. If you've done so much the J juice and you're not getting sick and you're saying you're not getting sick, and I see that there's still the same energy you hold, maybe a lack of boundaries, I'm going to sort of I'm just going to put the kibosh on this communication back and forth. I'm not trying to re-entertain old energy from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, even 7 years ago. Okay? That's why I have not allowed people to really private message me, because we are in times that people would construe as the end times, the rapture. I've been in contact or been in communication for the last 7 years with so many different religions. And now the system is realizing its intentions, though people have characterized what's going on as a rapture and the end times and apocalyptic stuff, and they're thinking about me. Whatever that means, I'm not going to find out what they're thinking about me. If they think I need to be saved or something, it's not going to happen. I don't mind people coming through my page and saying hi that I haven't talked to in a while, but I don't do private messenger back and forth. I'm not going there. And I know a lot of different people are very, very devout in their beliefs, and boundaries are not one of their strong suits. So I have to then develop boundaries for myself. And I still can like the people. Everyone that I've been in contact with the last 7 years, I liked their energy. They are beautiful people, but we're in some really crazy times, and energy is very, energy is something that you need to realize how influential it can be, just like water. You don't realize how influential water is until you see it coming up to your doorstep from the ocean because of the winds. You don't realize how influential energy is until you are inundated by a person's devout beliefs, their thoughts, their, whatever. So just understand that now more than ever, we all need to protect our energy and protect the inundation of people's energy and elements and get out of harm's way. Okay? And you can still appreciate them and like them. And so I'm glad that Facebook has the option to block on Messenger, but not on Facebook. So that way people can learn how to just keep the communication to a minimum. And I do put down parameters and rules. And I even posted it on my pin post in the comments because, we are, again, in times, people have said, the end times, a rapture, and they will find a way to save me. They think that I have a problem or something, that I need to be saved. And no, I've already saved myself. Save yourself, okay? But I don't mind you coming through and looking at what I'm posting and making a comment here and there, and that's fine. But again, I don't do questioning. I don't have people dropping scripture. I don't play that, okay? So anyway, so you figure out the part that you want to play in this world. So I grew up with Christina Applegate. I watched Married with Children, okay? And Christina Applegate has MS, and she can't barely even walk. I watched her last Netflix series, Dead to Me, and it was very Rosicrucian. It was extremely influential when it comes to accepting death, and also how do you deal with someone contracting cancer, and even asking the questions, well, if I hadn't gone and got checked, I wouldn't even known I have cancer if it wasn't for those tests. And when the AIDS virus was out back in the 80s and 90s, and people were like, oh, you should get tested for AIDS. I'm like, I don't fucking want to know. I'll wait till I get sick and then I'll do something. I never got sick. But even though they did cover that question in that Netflix series, Dead to Me with Christina Applegate, she still went and got tested and gotten treated for it. And then ended up succumbing to the treatments, I'm sure, and also to the death programming. Okay, so Hollywood has a lot of programming to the point where you accept death and you feel like you are like the stars, because every single Hollywood star in that article that I posted, okay, they're all dealing with some kind of disease, managing disease, getting treated for disease, to be determined what kind of disease they will be diagnosed with. I don't want to be like any Hollywood star. Now they are, when you think about it, they are real people who have been programmed to such a degree that you've seen how the programming is breaking down in Britney Spears. And you see the programming of once a wild child, now an all-loving mother. Okay? And so acting is very hard on the body, especially if you are into diverse roles, like Heath Ledger. And he was in dark roles, like the Batman, and he was the Joker. But when you want to break out of being typecasted, and that includes all of you guys, because all of you have been given a personality, you've been given a thought process, a belief system. Okay, you are allowed to change your personality. You are allowed to change your beliefs. Okay, but if you're going to evolve, because that's what change is, it's evolution, you better support that evolution correctly. The stars do exemplify evolution because they change from role to role if they don't want to be typecasted and they want to have a diverse resume, but they don't survive those evolutionary changes. They succumb to disease because they had to fit a specific part. And that would mean either gaining so much weight in a short amount of time or losing so much weight and keeping that weight off and not eating for a long time. And that taxes the body and causes dis-ease. No different than people out there in the community who are all skinny body, hair and lips, and that's it. And they're afraid of chemicals. They're going to succumb to disease at some point because they're starving. So when you model yourself after someone like Christina Applegate back when she was in the 90s and 2000s, you're starving and you will succumb to a disease at some point. And some people do so much J juice, they'll cure themselves so they never get sick until the body wants to finally push out the demons and they don't survive the energy conversion. So yeah, I mean, those who known me from way back when and they're coming back, I'm off the J juice. I don't recommend doing any more J juice now. Now it's eating all food and releasing those demons the way I have in my book. And it is about getting sick and supporting that sickness correctly with food, all food. Okay? And so I wanted to cover that it's interesting. It's interesting seeing the Hollywood stars succumb to their disease. All right. So, Prairie Fire. Weather Underground, Prairie Fire. I bought that book. I'm going to get it on Sunday at some point, and I'm going to freaking read it. Because that was the manifesto of the 1960s. And when you read the reviews on Prairie Fire, you see people who are like so dead against that book because of the activism around it, the type of domestic terrorism that's around it that happened back then. You're not supposed to do that anymore. Now, what is going on with Prairie Fire, it has evolved into a type of choice, a weather war, a type of choice in the matter. I mean, Prairie Fire has now shape-shifted, or has been shape-shifting into the medical, holistic, energy healing world. Prairie Fire is now weather wars. Prairie Fire is now what is going on right now in this whole rapture, if you are a Christian. Okay? And so you can't play the games they did back then doing those domestic terrorism and people dying from those intentions. That's why some of those people that were part of the Weather Underground, like Kathy Boudin, was in jail for a certain amount of time. And then other people didn't survive their activism. And they were building BOMBs and doing domestic terrorism. And so when you think about what happened in 2020, okay, when all those riots and everything, that was the kickoff. That's why it was so familiar. You had the Black Liberation Movement or Black Lives Matter. Now going, okay, we're in the second part of what the 1960s developed and carried into the conspiracy world, with the right wing completely resisting the changes that the left absolutely wants to have. Now, when you look at the word communist, okay, it has such a pejorative meaning. It doesn't have to, but it does, because of the necessity to release people who are intolerant and de-evolutionary and violent. But does it take violence to develop peace? Well, that's the thing. That's why we're not into those domestic terrorism anymore. Now it's about weather wars. Now it is about, do you understand the blueprint of what's going on between now and whenever? And when there's articles like Forbes magazine posting what would be called a fairy tale, because you're like trying to tell you the future configuration of all the different continents, okay? And they're using the word asteroid and bringing in NASA, asteroid, jet propulsion, having a website for looking for asteroids, and then going back to like panspermia, which is basically an asteroid belt just pelting the landscape, causing obviously potential polar shifts and volcanoes and inclement weather. Well, we have enough technology to potentially divert us from that. Is there a cycle that is noted to know when that would happen? No, we don't have that kind of information. So then everything is in fantasy fiction. In that Forbes magazine article about billionaires developing bunkers in the middle of the US because they're afraid of the ocean. What are they afraid of? What, a big asteroid hit the ocean, causes a tsunami? Or is there something else going on and the billionaires are moving inland away from the coast areas because they know shit's going on as far as water and weather. And I saw that article a couple of years ago, and I did chalk it up to fear mongering and what have you. But now we're seeing evidence. Now we're seeing evidence of water being used as a way to terraform, control, and also give people choices and allow them, hey, through these articles and through all the symbolism, these articles may not tell you exactly what's going to happen. They leave it up to like a fiction type story, like a movie or an article that says, don't really believe this because this is not plausible or whatever the hell they say. Okay. But they're so detailed in the futurist thinkings, like Scallion, who has a future of how humans are going to be, Edgar Casey, okay, these prophecies and propheter, whatever you call them, and who's to say their thoughts and how they want society to develop and be maintained in the future hasn't been actually used as a blueprint. And so there's so many ways you can take these articles, so many ways you can take these movies that are out there. You can believe it's all fantasy and it's just someone's imagination. And there you have that. You can be, you can play that game of everything is make-believe and what's going on right now is through my belief system of the rapture and Christianity, and that's fine. Okay, so you all have your belief systems. Every single one of them is credible. But when you know about the conspiracy world, then you have to question all the religions, question all the fantasy shit. You got to question everything. And then, so I said the SDS, the Students for a Democratic Society, 1960s.org, and that was Prairie Fire, that book that I'm going to read. And it's 188 pages, but I'm going to read it. So it's BLM, Black Lives Matter, or Black Liberation Movement, SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, conservatives/liberal. And you can't tell the difference between the two anymore. Even though they think they're so diametrically opposed and so different from each other. No, you guys are all the fucking same. Okay? You have the 2020, the pandemic, the weather, the water, the war, the storms, and social change. All right? And we're in that right now. The weather is going to keep people in constant state of evolution. And that was probably the first couple paragraphs in Prairie Fire, was that when you have constant change, it's like you develop ruins. There's ruins and you can rebuild. But right now we have 12.9 billion projected, right now 8 billion people, and 300 million at least in America that are so traditional. They stick their head in the sand, they're traditional, and they don't want to even consider new information. And so how do you interrupt their traditions? Well, now you're seeing the water. You saw the water converge onto North Carolina. And it was coming in fast. And South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, and North Carolina, both the Carolinas, traditional conservatives who are stuck in tradition, stuck in extreme traditional gender roles, predominantly Republican. And that was even in the Civil War, the 1860 to 1960. And people are tired of racism. They're tired of discrimination. They're tired of women being kept under the thumb of the man. They're tired. But that's also how you take out people who abuse their position. You use their lifestyle against them. That's what's going on. The hypersexuality and all sexual orientation, you are using people's lifestyles against them unless they figure out how to wake up and release those demons so they're not run by their hormones and to be so predatory. All right? So we are reliving the 1960s, the Vietnam War. I mean, this is like a perfect fucking storm in my world. There was no surprise that I was going to end up doing something like this. It wasn't, the J juice was not going to just stay the J juice and that's it. The J juice turned into the J world, turned to evolution. And all of a sudden I'm realizing what I was trained for and what I'm meant for is to survive what's going on here. Because when you're in constant change, I was in constant change as a kid, rebelling and going to different places in different atmospheres, in different cultures, different lifestyles, different belief systems. When you're in constant change, you get conditioned to be able to change at a drop of a hat to save your fucking ass. That's the whole point of the J-World. It is prairie fire. It is revolution in the body, in the mind, and in the spirit. But it's your revolution. It's not something that you go and impose on somebody else. It's your specific revolution, evolution, that you must experience yourself, that you cannot possibly force on somebody else. Because the environment is going to force you to deal with the storm inside. And that's what those cytokine storms are. When the environment changes, the climate changes, people's demons wake up. The storm is brewing inside. And when the storm is brewing out there, in any place that's, in any place, the storm will wake up and brew inside of you. What are you going to do to deal with that storm brewing inside of you? And so I said, just remember, the South will not rise again. The system will make sure of it. The South will sink underwater if you don't figure out how to save yourself. Who predominantly resides in the South? Extreme conservatives. Okay? And so when you look at the future Navy map that somebody else posted back in 2019, who actually died, Rick Duarte. And that name sounds familiar. I may have seen him the last, 7 years in the conspiracy world, but he ran a group called something, I forget what it was called. He ran a group. He's dead now. The group is paused, and he died. Someone noticed that he doesn't post anymore. He died. I don't know what he died from. But he was studying the patterns of the weather, the water, the DEWs, all the, what we now figured out as eminent domain is going to be used to legally take things and move people move. And so that Navy map that he posted, as well as is showing you the coastlines are going to be compromised. The coastlines are going to be compromised. California, people are like, oh no, it's make-believe. You're just fear-mongering. And absolutely fucking, yeah, I'm fear-mongering. Absolutely. That means it's an indicator. Something's going on. Before it was like a conspiracy theory. Before it was like it's a fantasy. Someone's just trying to make you scared and capitalize on it. But when Forbes writes something like that is so fucking detailed, it's a clue to those who now realize how this works. Because those in the conspiracy world that realize how this works and need to figure out how to save themselves are part of the Illuminati, right? Because you get how they're telling you a story without telling you the actual story. You got to read between the lines. And those are like completely oblivious. They're all like, oh no, I only believe in one way and that's it and whatever. That's just a story and that's a conspiracy theory and blah, blah. Hey, that's fine. Then you go and live on the coast and everything is happy, happy, joy, joy until you get inundated with so much water. And who say it won't happen in the next 5 minutes or the next 5 years or the next 5 months or the next 5 fucking weeks or days? I wouldn't want to live on the coast right now. I'd get the fuck away from the coast right now, given that there are hurricanes brewing out there in the Atlantic. They already have another one that's going to be coming, 40% chance of turning into a cyclone and whatever else. Where is that going to hit? Will Idalia double back and go back and hit the Northeast like they're saying, maybe potentially, or they go back and hit? You don't fucking know. And when you're on the coast, you're a sitting goddamn duck. And so I'm saying, real estate here in Ohio is going up 50%, 15% steadily, because when people realize that being in the Midwest, not so much in Tornado Alley like Oklahoma, but something like where I'm at, but yeah, I can get probably residual and even get some major rainstorm, but I'm not anywhere near the coast. If I get flooded because of a huge rainstorm, I'll deal with it. I'll listen to my government, go wherever the place to go. But I know that statistically, the propensity of something happening on the coast is far more than being somewhere, inland. All right? And so if you are planning to go live in New Orleans, if you're planning to go live in freaking Florida, and you're in California, maybe rethink that and go live somewhere like in Ohio. Somewhere in the Great Lakes, somewhere where you're okay with rebuilding if you need to because of tornadoes. That's my biggest thing, is the tornadoes. And then a lot of water. Because we do have the Ohio River, not too far. We have lakes and streams. But I wouldn't want to live on the coast. And so, yeah, I can't wait to read that book, Prairie Fire, because I really want to see what my parents and their cohorts were planning. I want to know what Alex Jones was fucking talking about, because he was talking about Bernadette Dorn. He's talking about Obama, part of all that. I was part of the independent movement, and Fred Newman, who is a social therapist, was backing running somebody to be president, independent person for president. I forget her name. But I was part of that movement that was all about the 1960s and social therapy, social change, and developing a consensus of sorts, whatever that means. But I never got on board. I got on board and played the game for a bit because I was dating somebody that was high up in there, but I didn't really adopt it personally, as I felt like it was my baby. It wasn't my baby. It was my boyfriend's baby at the time, and I was just second fiddle. And I didn't really see the necessity of the independent movement because it was just another offshoot, in my opinion. But then I realized that it came from the 1960s. And it was a path to a type of change and empowering Black youth and all of that in the inner cities to take part in the interest of the future. And I get it. I mean, I'm not completely oblivious to all that, but yeah. So, okay. All right. Give me 1 second, okay? Just wanted to see something real quick. But yeah, I mean, I lived in San Francisco for a lot. I did the cold calling, doing polls, asking people what they thought about Democrat, Republican. And then, yeah. Yeah, people are weird. Block. Confirm. Little trolls coming on, but that's okay. But anyways, saying shit in different languages. All right. All right, so now, oops, I'll do that and then go back here. So I can hear someone say, oh, Jillian, you support communism. You're a communist. You're a deadly communist. Because I'm in a right-wing country. I'm dating my husband, who is around mostly right-wing people. And I'm from California, and they're like, oh, who is this chick? Okay, there is a split here in Ohio. We have the Black Lives Matters type of people here, and we also have the right-wing Christian patriot veterans. And so I'm like straddling both worlds, and I am discovering, what's my potential and what I've done with the whole J world and evolving it, and then also discovering what I was raised in from the 1960s. And so I can hear someone say, oh, Jillian, you support communism. You're a communist. You're a deadly communist. You have no idea what communism really looks like in the new world. We're not even there yet. We're just starting to get there. We're going through the deletion process, releasing the demons. We're going through the who's going to be a useless eater. Well, you determine if you're going to be a useless eater or not somebody else. We're not going back to World War II, where somebody that's in an outfit telling you to go left or go right. Okay, that's not where we're at. Now it's like you choose your own fucking adventure. You choose reality you want to live in, and then you will be subject to the ramifications of your choices. When I'm like, hey, the medical holistic energy healing world is using antibiotics on you, anti-life protocols on you, doing things like butchering you through the surgical system, taking away your organs, disabling your immune system, and you're like, hey, whatever. That's your choice. Somebody has warned you, giving you a different argument to consider. And if you're like, oh, I'm not going to consider that, as I don't believe in that, then that's your choice. Fine. As long as you're comfortable with your choices and someone gave you the choice and you chose to not entertain something different, then that's your fucking choice. That's the war and the world that you're in. You make the choices. You choose your own adventure. Like the 80s books that we had when we were kids. Choose your own adventure. If you do this, then this happens. If you do this, then this happens. That's Microsoft organizational development type of process flow diagrams. We have no basis of reference because the Cultural Revolution happened at the same time in China. So China was going through their own Cultural Revolution. They were combining all the dynasties under one rule, Mao, and he developed a communist regime. People were resisting. They were targeting intellectuals, and they wanted a new government, proletariat. And I went there back in 2003. My parents, my sister and my mom went there back in the 80s when they were just opening up that world. So I know the 1960s was all right. What was going on in the 1960s, the Vietnam War, was right in lockstep with what was going on in China, the Cultural Revolution. Okay, so we have no base of reference because the Cultural Revolution happened the same time. The 1960s revolution happened. When people resist, they become violent. Violence begets violence, and then you can't distinguish between the enemy and the good person. So why gamble with your life with your preconceived notions? Be the one to keep yourself alive. You're in America. No one's telling you to go board a fucking cattle car, okay? You're allowed to be in your home. You're given warnings, tornado warnings, flood warnings, hurricane warnings, all types of warnings, air quality warnings, okay? You're given all these warnings. Mask warnings. Here's a V warning. Here, take a V or don't take a V. Here's a warning about that. You're making a fucking choice. No one is ramming these choices down your throat. You have to make the choice. When you pay your insurance premiums, you're in a contract to say that you are going to take all the anti-life protocols and surgeries they recommend. And if you don't want to do that, then you don't buy health insurance. You don't even go near a fucking doctor or a nurse or any of the pharmaceuticals or any of the holistic energy healing people. You stay the fuck away from them because they're selling you anti-life stuff. You have a fucking choice. Okay? Be the one to keep yourself alive. Things may not be as bad as you think, but we have a lot of people who are fearful because of how they perceive the past. I don't blame them. So intend to understand the other argument. Even if you don't understand and you have very old traditional beliefs, that's probably the conflict. Many old traditional patriarchal beliefs are going to the wayside. Okay? Even though it doesn't seem like that because you have all these girls on fucking OnlyFans. But that's how the system is like, hey, you want to choose to be a sex slave to somebody or be a piece for some guy in the Midwest or in California or New York, and you don't think of yourself as anything but a body and that's it, and a baby maker? Well, that's your fucking choice. But there's other choices out there if you choose to go and explore them. But if your mom has radicalized you into being a sex thing to somebody else, then, and you choose to listen to her, again, that is your choice. No one is putting a GON to your head and telling you have to be a sex slave to some dude out there. But if you so worship your mother and she's so into pimping you out to the nearest dude because she doesn't want to take care of you, then that is your fucking choice. And so women have choices out there. Men have choices out there. And then you have to strategize your fucking survival. If you're in a situation where you don't want to really be in a situation, but you want to be in the situation, how do you strategize your survival? How do you reteach people about yourself? How do you put down fucking boundaries? And if you're not very savvy in any of that, then you'll be forced into whatever your mom and your dad and your husband, your wife have put you in. And many people are under the enslavement of that kind of Stockholm syndrome, whether it's in politics, religion, or science. And so you saw that Hurricane Ian swept through South Carolina, flooding beaches. Oh, that was Hurricane Ian. That was way back, yeah. Yeah, so there's places that had so much water. Hurricane Ian or Hurricane Ayala? Oh, see. But that's what's going on is Hurricane Ian, Ayala, whatever. They're going to be flooding things out, okay? And so now I'm going to read this. So Rick Duarte, and he ran a group called Nothing Six. It was called something else, and he changed the name. That was back in June 5th of 2019. And so I said, I am not resisting what's going on because I am severely outnumbered, outsmarted, and outranked. I must save myself. Imagine spending your whole life uncovering the plans of the New World Order and you don't even survive. No different than those who have given their life to develop the New World and they don't even survive. Like my parents. Okay, like my parents' cohorts. They're not going to survive this change. They are way behind the eight ball. They're too far gone. They both have been activated and they did their job. Now you have an opportunity to survive. You don't have to die developing the New World or resisting the New World. You must strategize your survival. So resistors were activated to condition people to not to accept it, but to condition people that the change is going to happen. Because even resistors now understand what's going on. Even though they're resisting, they are acknowledging that there is something going on. They know something's going on. Doesn't mean that they're going to stop it. But then they are being used as a tool to go and condition their friends and family for these changes. And the system doesn't care if you agree with it or not. The fact that you're getting the information out is what they were intending. Because when you don't know something, you don't know something until you know it, until it is presented to you, regardless of your belief in it or your denying or assuming its existence. And so the system will always tell you what they're going to do, even if it's masked behind fiction, masked behind pretty words or deceptive words. But the system will always tell you what they're going to do. Always. And then you got to look for not only the indicators, but the evidence. And that's even saying it doesn't exist. When you say religion or God doesn't exist, it does exist because you acknowledge the word God. Now, I do acknowledge the word God. Reversed dog. Pavlov's dog. So you have God, someone's like all omnipotent and there's some higher power and whatever. Okay, yeah, there's a higher power. It's called, the Rosicrucians. All right. I acknowledge the God who then is conditioning us like Pavlov's dogs. Conditioning us to believe in something. Conditioning us to give our power away to someone or something. Conditioning us to worship or demonize something. Okay. When I say I don't believe in God, I do believe in a higher power and it ain't fucking me. It's called the Rosicrucian order, and they're everywhere. They're your neighbors. They're you, parts of you, that acknowledge what's going on and is getting the word out, whether you resist it or accept it. You are the God out there. You are carrying out the intentions by getting the word out. Okay? So all of us have been activated to develop the new world, resisting or developing and accepting. And so he said, The Three Phases of Agenda 21 and the U.S. Navy and Future Map of America by Rick Duarte, June 5th, 2019. Agenda 21 is a non-binding action plan of the United Nations with regard to sustainable development. It is a product of the Earth Summit UN Conference on Environment and Development held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1992, in which more than 160 nations were in attendance. It is an action agenda for the UN, other multilateral organizations, and individual government around the world that can be executed at local, national, and global levels. The 21 Agenda 21, it refers to the 21st century. It has been affirmed and had a few modifications at subsequent UN conferences. Its aim is to achieve global sustainable development. One major objective of the Agenda 21 initiative is that every local government should draw its own local Agenda 21. Since 2015, Sustainable Development Goals are included in the Agenda 2030. That's why my next book won't come out until 2030. Because I got to just see how this all rides out. You got to release your demons and find a way to get to safe place, wherever that is. So right now, there is no book that's going to come out after this right now. I'm waiting until 2030. Over the past 9 years, I've amassed 10,000 of pics, articles, and videos. I've read every single article. I've watched every single video. This is Rick Duarte saying it. With that much knowledge under my belt, I can comfortably say that in my opinion and from my viewpoint, there are three phases of Agenda 21 and the U.S. Navy Future Map of America. Phase 1, East Coast. Coastal flooding along the eastern seaboard has been an issue and concern for a number of years, perhaps going back as far as 4 decades ago. Well, yeah, this shit is just happened. It's happening for a while. I've documented this numerous times over the years, but for the sake of brevity, I've included a couple of those recent articles below. One should make particular note of the article, entire U.S. East Coast experienced 90% increase in coastal flooding over the past 20 years. Then the phase 2, Central and U.S. Gulf Coast states. That's why I'm saying get out of the east, get out of the coast if you can. If I had the time, I could give a 1-hour lecture on this phase. Suffice it to say, if you follow my posts over the past several months, even years, you've noticed that there has been an inordinate amount of excessive heavy rainfall and widespread flooding in these regions. The phenomena is not only due to man-made storms, it is also due to man-made hurricanes as well. And we know this. I've included one of my many recent posts as documentation. Phase 3, West Coast. Now you look at the future map, West Coast is pretty much decimated. Phase 3 appears to be the final phase of all three given the fact of recent events over the past few years, beginning with the directed energy weapons, fires that have decimated Northern California since 2011. All right? California is going to be next at some point. With tens of millions of acres of land laid barren from these man-made fires, storms are firing up across all California at an unprecedented pace. Of particular note in this, winter season's extremely heavy snowfall and the heavy out-of-season rainfall. Now these events do not only pertain to California, they also apply to Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, and New Mexico. And he goes, well, that's pretty much a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the learning something new from this article. Okay. And then danger in the heartland. Levees are falling along the 3.789 mile stretch of Arkansas and Mississippi rivers. Residents in several communities located near the swollen Mississippi and Arkansas River were forced to flee their homes on Thursday and Friday following several levee failures. Residents in West Quincy, Missouri, this is in 2019, are fleeing to higher ground due to a levee failure near already bloated Mississippi River. The levee breach took place along the Durgins Creek, which flows into Mississippi River just upstream of West Quincy. The Marion County Sheriff's Office issued the evacuation orders in West Quincy. Okay. Emergency management flooding along the Durgins Creek in Lewis County. Water is expected to flow south into West Quincy. Move to higher ground. And then USA, Miami, Florida is racing against time to keep up with sea level rise. This is April 12th, 2018. When the flooding is really bad, water doesn't just fill the streets outside Manolo Pedraza's house. It bubbles up through shower drains. Pedraza lives in Shorecrest, a northern Miami neighborhood that faces flooding so regularly it happens even when it hasn't rained. All it takes to fill the streets to knee-high depth on those days is a full moon. A full moon, that's right, high tide. The floods come up through the storm drains, making it impossible to navigate without encountering the water, which is mixed with sewage and whatever else is picked up along the way. So can you imagine when there's no storm, but it's a high tide, and then you're up to knee deep in water? During a visit to Pedraza's neighborhood, I walk only where the water, likely filled with fecal bacteria, won't rise above my waterproof boots. I'm lucky that day. Pools cover parts of the streets, but at least I can walk that area without soaking my feet. Oh my God. This is nothing, Pedraza said in Spanish. Sometimes it comes all the way up to the house. The sunny day flooding, as it's known, is consistent enough you can look at a calendar and a tide chart to plan a trip around it. High tides cause the interaction between the sun, moon, earth, and oceans and are behind the flooding. I've visited during what are often the highest tides of the year, known as king tides. Okay, so those that don't believe in space and how the satellites work, like the sun, the moon, the earth, and all that, it's time for you to start, at least acknowledging science is not it's not a fucking fairy tale, okay? Miami is a kind of a poster child for a major city in big trouble. Well, I already knew this. They're like sticking out there in the middle of the fucking ocean, high rises and hot chicks and hot cars and drug cartels. I mean, yeah, Florida's fucking expendable right now because you don't need all the hot chicks out there. You don't need all the big houses and the highfalutin shit, and you need all the drugs, and you don't need all the big, you know, all the baubles that are out there. And the attitude that comes along with Miami people. Miami's a kind of a poster child for a major city in big trouble, said Jeff Goodell, author of The Water Will Come, Rising Seas and Sinking Cities, and the Remaking of the Civilized World. Beyond the damage to homes, roads, and other infrastructure, the flooding also threatens drinking water and plant life. Ultimately, of course, it means larger parts of the city could become permanently uninhabitable. Yeah. I wouldn't invest any freaking thing in Miami or anywhere in Florida. I would not invest anywhere in Florida. That means the rest of the U.S. should be paying attention to how Miami handles its struggle against sea level rise in the coming years. It could provide a window into the future for other large coastal urban areas. The Netherlands has been holding back the oceans for decades, and it's exporting its knowledge to cities such as New Orleans. But the Dutch have been building on land reclaimed from the sea. In Miami, it's a different situation. When low-lying neighborhoods in Miami and nearby Miami Beach were built up decades ago, they weren't developed with the assumption that seas would rise over time. In some places, buildings and roads are being raised or moved. In others, natural features like mangroves, reefs, and wetlands are being restored. Those are the kind of changes that might be enough to keep much of Miami above water for at least a few decades. Planning long-term is trickier. Okay, so now you have these crazy-ass storms. I think he wrote this in 2018, right? Now you have these crazy-ass storms that are causing so much storm surge that it'll make things uninhabitable. It'll weaken the infrastructure, especially if they weren't prepared for having that much water come in. And when you think about it, what happened in Hurricane Idalia, okay? Assume another one's going to come through. It'd be like a carpet bomb, like in Vietnam. You just keep up the stress. You keep up the stress, keep up the momentum. Don't let people get too comfortable in organizing to get out, because you're watching people in these groups that are like Cedar Key and Horseshoe Cove, and they're asking, hey, everybody come in, and we need volunteers to reconstruct this and to construct that and to give food and this and piping and all this stuff. And when you have a reconstruction every few weeks, people are going to get tired of giving so much when you have to keep rebuilding and it gets destroyed. Rebuilding, it gets destroyed. I mean, that's got to, eventually people are going to be like, okay, well, is it really worth to keep rebuilding when you keep getting destroyed? But people don't think that way right now. It has to happen a few times back to back. And so you see now people are like, okay, give money to go and do this, give money to go do that so we can go and rebuild. If it happens once, it can happen again, but how long between times it happening once and again? My guess is going to happen more frequently. It's going to happen frequently and more frequently. Entire U.S. East Coast experiencing 90% increase in coastal flooding over the past 20 years. He wrote this back in 2018. So the University of New Hampshire scientists found that high tide floods, or so-called nuisance flooding, that happens along shore roadways during seasonal high tides or minor wind events along the U.S. East Coast are occurring far more frequently than ever before. Turning words into numbers, these scientists found that in the past 20 years, roads along the East Coast have experienced a 90% increase in flooding, often making the roads in these communities impassable, causing delays as well as stress and impacting transportation and goods and services. This could be just the beginning of impact on these areas, said Jennifer Jacobs, professor of civil and environmental engineering. With a continued rise in sea levels, the nuisance flooding frequency is projected to grow, and the effect on the physical roads and the people that live along the coastlines is concerning. The researchers found that tidal nuisance flooding threatens over 12,000 kilometers, or 7,500 miles of roadways along the entire East Coast, with over 400 miles of that being interstate roads. Okay, so there's that. And then the whole thing was surging. Okay, so now, let's see. Yeah. Okay, so they're showing you a trend. I'm not going to read all of this. They're showing you a trend, and then that trend is going to increase and accelerate based upon weather engineering. All right? And so Agenda 21 in the New World Order, the overpopulation issue is used often by those who want an excuse to cull the masses. Overpopulation describes a situation where the number of people exhausted resources in a closed environment, such that it can no longer support that population. In a closed environment, remember I talked about open environment, closed environment, open system, closed system? That means one which relies on keeping people in poverty using fossil fuels and by dumping every possible toxic poison and chemical possible when people must live, wash, breathe, and reproduce. Okay, I mean, I get where he's coming from because he doesn't understand releasing the demons and having an open system, releasing the demons, and that you don't have to die from poisons or whatever. But again, the whole J world is saying you don't have to be afraid of poisons per se. Okay, you know, poverty is all relative to what you think is you're impoverished from. I'm not looking to I've never really felt comfortable having a lot of money. Okay, it's a lot of responsibility, and then you attract parasites. And so, you know, I've evolved this thought process as far as overpopulation. We have a lot of people who are very consumeristic and disposable, and everything is disposable to them. So, you know, we're going to see who is going to still consider themselves disposable or sustainable, and that's what the New World Order is trying to develop, is a sustainable development. And that's going to require a lot of evolution, a lot of change. And so there is some more, Thursday, August 31st, 2023. And just like that, what we're talking about this morning shows up front, the NHC as a yellow area of interest, National Hurricane Center. But now it's like 40% versus 20%, something like that. All right, so now we have that. I'm going to read this because this is what you need to understand when it comes to fantasy versus fiction and reality and truth. Everything is true. You can just choose your own adventure, choose your belief system and live in it. And hey, fine, great. So I'm going to read this. What is the best defense for the architects of the blueprint of the past, present, and future? Plausible deniability. That's just fan fiction. That's just somebody's perception of what they think is going to happen based upon this, and this that hasn't been proven that could actually happen. This is just a what if scenario. Okay. So that map. So I showed you the future Navy map of America, and then we all were exposed to that Forbes article the last 7 years about the future maps of the world, the continents. And before it's like, so I said I've seen this before several years ago and just chalked it up to fear mongering. But fear mongering is actually an indicator to let you know this will happen. But remember how fearful people are. They don't want to face reality until they're provided with some kind of evidence and indicator. Well, the indicators are here. The evidence is unmistakable. Will it happen in your lifetime? You will experience the process. Some of you will survive the process, others will not. Choose your own adventure. Okay? And so, given that I read the article, and they were using asteroids and other things and pole shifts. Replace asteroid with direct energy weapons, because an asteroid could be a direct energy weapon relative to the intention. With how detailed that article is, this is the plan. If you can get past the asteroid theory and other types of pole shift theories, read between the lines. Jet Propulsion Lab, NASA, right? Never a straight answer. And the whole thing with the moon landing, I don't really care as far as India. Real, fake, who cares? It doesn't matter. It makes absolutely no fucking difference in my world. All right, so Jet Propulsion Lab, NASA, direct energy, you get the point. You get the gist, right? So this is what this guy wrote. When I wrote my first article on billionaire bunkers years ago, I never would have imagined how quickly our world was changing. Our lives are in constant state of flux. The political situation aside, our Earth is rapidly changing. Between the increase of bizarre weather patterns hitting the Earth and recent major volcanic activity, now more than ever, our focus is on the planet's future. In the early 1980s, spiritual visionaries, or cult leaders, right, and futurists provide clues to our changing planet. Often dismissed as crazy prophets, their thoughts for a new world were quickly ignored and laughed at. So imagine they are the Rosicrucians. They already knew how they were going to do stuff. They already knew how to use Tesla's energy. They already knew how they were going to configure smart cities. They already knew this, but they were slowly leaking the plans out, and people were just dismissing it. No different than me doing the whole immortality. People are dismissing it, but I'm slowly leaking that you don't have to fucking die someday. Okay, it took me a while to get it out there. So, Gordon Michael Scallion was a futurist teacher and consciousness studies and metaphysics and spiritual visionary. In the 80s, he claims to have had a spiritual awakening that helped him create very detailed maps of the future world, all stemming from cataclysmic pole shift. And you can develop pole shifts man-made just by pointing the weather, the wind, the earth, energy. You have enough energy weapons to get to the core of the earth, you can do anything you want. The result while not based on any science, right? Because it's all about organic shit going on. What kind of patterns in the universe, right? Nonetheless, provides a vivid and compelling picture of Earth ravaged by flooding. So what he's saying is there hasn't been enough evidence to show that there's going to be another pattern emergence come up or another part of the pattern. We haven't been around long enough to understand the patterns. If we're saying that billions and billions of years ago, there was, panspermia or asteroids or other things like that happening, cataclysmic pole shifts. Well, what was the reason? Was it asteroids? Was it, aliens? And so now what he's saying and not saying is that you don't have to have a pattern to prove that it can happen. You can develop and create a pattern just by even saying, okay, we're planning to have a kickoff of a changing of the continents and a change in the weather, and it's not going to happen right now, but we'll give you enough warning, global warming and climate change and all that shit and green machine, and you're going to have Rosa Quarry and Alex Jones talk about it and all the different people, Charlotte Isterbite and the whole educational system, and then by 2019, 2020, it will be a kickoff. The machines are going to start revving the engines, and then there you go. There's a pattern just developed and just created. Just by me even just diverging from my usual path. Instead of going to the restroom, I go downstairs and drink coffee. I can just develop a new pattern every fucking day if I want to. Anybody can develop a new pattern if they want. And so Scallion believed that a pole shift would stem from global warming, nuclear activity, and the misuse of technology. Scallion believed that a pole shift would stem from global warming. Well, where would global warming come from? A misuse in technology using nuclear activity, such as particle acceleration, such as particle proliferation, such as eminent domain, people moving, right? Now that we're looking at what's going on today. Another theorist and psychic, Edgar Cayce, predicted a 60 to 20 degree shift, while Scallion predicted a 20 to 45 degree shift. Cayce predicted that when both Mount Etna volcano in Italy and Mount Pelée in Martinique erupt together, there would be approximately 90 days to evacuate the west coast before the massive flooding claims the coastline. I'm not trying to scare you, but this is potentially what could happen. When will it happen? That's what I'm saying. Evacuate. If they tell you evacuate. But hopefully it's not too fucking late. How much warning will you get? That's the thing. Okay? As soon as you start hearing rumors of something going on, I don't know. I don't even want to even go wait for the rumors. I would find a way to get the fuck out of the coastlines no matter what. If this is what... This is about humans. They don't fucking future think. They don't listen to indicators. They're under the influence. They're fucking under the influence. But the most compelling argument is that an asteroid or a comet collision with Earth could cause the entire planet to shift. So forget the whole asteroid theory and the comet theory. Forget all that. Imagine direct energy weapons having the intention to cause this entire planet to shift. Okay? According to NASA report, many doomsday theorists have tried to take this natural geological occurrence and suggest it could lead to Earth's destruction. Again, there's not enough science to prove that it's going to happen now or even in the future. But right now, from this point of view, it's all speculation, not to be used as something as fact and to work from. But would there be any dramatic effects? The answer from the geologic and fossil records we have from hundreds of past magnetic polarity reversals seems to be no. See, there you go. So they gave you a theory and they just took it away. But they're still going to go on with how they think things are going to happen. See, you break apart these articles so you understand what's going on. They're telling you by not telling you, okay? There is nothing in the millions of years of geological records suggests that any of the doomsday scenarios connected to a pole reversal should be taken seriously. There you go. They give you it and they take it away. I recently spent the day at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, where the NEOWISE mission has become the official asteroid hunter. Okay, that's a lot of money for... So when you're developing an asteroid hunter, and what is it, a big long laser beam that goes and explodes the asteroid? Well, think of that as some target on Earth. And so when you're playing Space Invaders and asteroids and Centipede, and you're using long-range lasers to go and hone in on your targeting skills, that could be easily applied to now just turn the lasers onto Earth and figure out where you want to terraform, what continents you want to split apart, what oceans you want to rise, okay? I mean, you got to just think more than what is being shown to you. You have to understand the bigger fucking picture. I'll read this again. I recently spent the day at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, where the NEOWISE mission has become the official asteroid hunter. According to Amy Mainzer, JPL NEOWISE principal investigator, the mission has discovered 250 new objects, including 72 near-Earth objects and 4 new comets. They have the task of documenting potentially hazardous near-Earth objects. NASA has even created an asteroid watch website with detailed listings of the discovered objects as well as detailed impact risk chart, which lists the year 2020 as the earliest increased activity risk. Oh, really? Oh, isn't that convenient and coincidental? NASA has even created an asteroid watch website with detailed listings of discovered objects as well as detailed impact risk chart, which lists the year 2020 as the earliest increased activity risk. 2020. That's pretty defined. Well, I guess if it's floating at the speed of whatever, and they've done all their formulas, they're like, okay, well, 2020 is when it's going to hit, or right? During the Obama administration, plans were developed for NASA to launch a robotic probe in 2021 towards a near-Earth asteroid. The current target is 1,300 foot wide rock called 2008 EV5. According to John Holdren, the then director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, after it arrives at the asteroid, the spacecraft will pluck a boulder off its surface and then fly along with the space rock for a while, investigating the potential of a deflection strategy known as the enhanced gravity tractor. The probe will then head back towards Earth, eventually placing the boulder in orbit around the moon. Astronauts aboard NASA's Orion space capsule will visit the rock in the mid-2020s. Okay. While smaller asteroids can do great damage on a local scale, experts think that space rocks must be at least 0.6 miles wide to threaten human civilization. NASA scientists estimate that they have found at least 90% of these enormous near-Earth asteroids, and none of them pose a threat for the future. Let me read this again. While smaller asteroids can do great damage on a local scale, experts think that space rocks must be at least 0.6 miles wide to threaten human civilization. NASA scientists estimate that they have found at least 90% of these enormous near-Earth asteroids, and none of them pose a threat for the future. Okay, so none of them pose a threat for the future. 90% of them. So there's that 10%. So we're spending billions and billions and trillions of dollars on these enhanced gravity tractors and other things. Space, fucking video games, okay? Just read between the lines, guys. They're telling you without telling you. I spoke with Professor Donald L. Turcotte, an expert in planetary geology, at the University of California, Davis, Earth and Planetary Science Department. He tells me that the prediction of earthquakes causing a planetary shift and coastal flooding is for the most part nonsense. However, he did say as far as more likely an asteroid hit would cause a polar shift. This could ultimately lead to cataclysmic change and a map similar to Scallion's original vision. And so he's saying that the predictions of earthquakes causing planetary shift and coastal flooding is for the most part nonsense. Okay. With all of this knowledge of future mapping, do the world's financial leaders know something we don't? Consider how many of the richest families have been grabbing up massive amounts of farmlands around the world. All property is far away from coastal areas and in locations conducive to self-survival farming and coal mining. Bell Ranch land in New Mexico owned by billionaire Bates Land Consortium. It appears that dry territories in the United States such as Montana, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Texas are all very popular regions for the wealthiest individuals. Billionaires such as John Malone, currently largest landowner in America, owns 2,200,000 acres, including Wyoming and Colorado. Ted Turner, 2 million acres in Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, and North Dakota. Philip Anschutz, 434,000 acres in Wyoming. Amazon Jeff Bezos, 400,000 acres in Texas. And Stan Kroenke, 225,162 acres in Montana. All have amassed major land. Upon further research, many billionaires are preparing for future escape plans with vacation homes in remote locations. Many of them also have their private planes ready to depart at a moment's notice. Billionaire Bill Gates recently acquired 28,000 acres in Arizona to create his own city called Belmont, according to the company announcement. And so Belmont will create a forward-thinking community with a communication and infrastructure spine that embraces cutting-edge technology designed around high-speed digital networks, data centers, new manufacturing technology and distribution models, autonomous vehicles, and autonomous logistic hubs. The company details the plans including 3,800 acres for office, commercial, and retail space, 470 acres for public schools, and there is a plan for 80,000 residential units. Belmont will transform a raw blank land into futuristic city built around flexible infrastructure model, added Belmont Properties. Okay, so now you see, now hold on. I'm not going to read those two because, yeah, there's a Mormon church guy, David Hall, doing that. There is moguls in Australia and New Zealand have been snapping up farmland to record paces. Okay, and so in the event of post-asteroid apocalypse, where are the safest territories in the world, right? Forget the asteroid, just where's the safe place to go? According to several prognosticators and much criticized theorists, here's a detailed list of the predicted and changed based upon geological positioning. All post-polar shift predictions are based on theories from Gordon Michael Scallion, Edgar Cayce, and others, and should not be construed as fact. Okay. Now, I should read this. Africa will ultimately be divided into 3 parts. The Nile will widen significantly. A brand new waterway will split the entire area from Mediterranean Sea towards Gabon. As the Red Sea enlarges, Cairo will be ultimately disappeared into the sea. The majority of Madagascar will also be taken by the sea. New land will then rise in the Arabian Sea. A new landmass will develop to the north and west of Cape Town, and new mountains ranges will emerge above ground in the area. Lake Victoria will merge with Lake Nyasa and flow into the Indian Ocean. Central Eastern African coastlines will be completely inundated by water. Okay, so China. This heavily seismic region will have the most severe and dramatic earth changes. Land will be inundated from the Philippines to Japan and north to the Bering Sea, include the Kuru and Sakhalin Islands. At the Pacific plate shifts, it positions 9 degrees. The islands of Japan will eventually sink, leaving only a few small islands. Taiwan and most of Korea will be completely lost to the sea. The entire coastal range of China will be pushed inland hundreds of miles. Indonesia will break up, however, some islands will remain and new land will emerge. The Philippines will disappear completely beneath the sea. Asia will lose a significant amount of its land mass through these dramatic changes. However, entirely new land will eventually be created. Okay? So I'm saying this because even though it's like fiction, don't assume it won't happen. Do not assume it won't happen. Start looking for, just like, when ants are getting inundated by water and you're seeing them go to like the nearest stick and the nearest this, nearest that to get above the water. That's going to be like in so many different ways, is you have to now know how to know when to move, especially when you're in these areas that have that kind of future prediction. If you're in China and all this shit's going on, or Japan, I wouldn't want to be in Japan. I wouldn't want to be in Florida, Japan, or any of the coastal areas. No, no, no. India. Due to extreme land buckling and lowering the elevation of the country, the population of India will be told not to seek higher ground within the interior territory, but to head to the Himalayas, to Tibet and Nepal and China, or the higher mountains that are officially within Indian territory. Antarctica. Antarctica will become fertile, soil-rich and farming territory. New land will be created from the Antarctic Peninsula to the Tierra del Fuego and east towards the South Georgia Island. Future map of Australia and New Zealand. Australia will lose nearly 25% of its land due to coastal flooding. The Adelaide area will become a new sea all the way north towards Lake Eyre. The Simpson and Gibson deserts will eventually become fertile. Farming and entirely new communities will develop between the Great Sandy and Simpson deserts, and new refugee settlements will be created in Queensland. New land will also be created off the coast. All right? So New Zealand will grow in size and will once again join the land of the old Australia. New Zealand will quickly become the glory land and ultimately become out of the safest areas in the entire world. It will become one of the safest areas in the entire world. Wow. So Future Map of Europe by Gordon Michael Skellion. All right, here you go. This is for Audrey. This is for John, everybody in Europe. Europe will experience the fastest and most serious earth changes. Most of Northern Europe will sink between the sea as the tectonic plates underneath it collapses. Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark will all disappear and will ultimately create hundreds of small islands. Oh, I'm sure. What is Klaus Schwab going to plan for himself? He probably knows, if he even lives through this. I don't know. Most of the United Kingdom, from Scotland to the English Channel, will disappear beneath the sea. Okay, now that you know this is for you, Audrey. Scotland. Most of the United Kingdom, from Scotland to the English Channel, will disappear beneath the sea. Several small islands will remain. Major cities like London and Birmingham will be among the remaining islands. Much of Ireland will disappear beneath the sea except for the higher ground areas. So pay attention, and you know you are. Russia will be separated from Europe by an entirely new sea when the Caspian, Black, Kara, and Baltic Sea combines. The new sea will stretch all the way to the Genes River in Siberia. The area's climate will remain safe, leaving Russia to supply most of Europe's food. The Black Sea will emerge within the North Sea as well, leaving Bulgaria and Romania completely underwater. Oh, wow. Certain areas of western Turkey will go under the water, creating a new coastline from Istanbul to Cyprus. Much of Central Europe will sink, and most of the land between the Mediterranean Sea and the Baltic Sea will be completely lost underwater. The majority of France will go underwater, leaving an island in the area surrounding Paris. A completely new waterway will then separate Switzerland from France, creating a line from Geneva to Zurich. Italy will be entirely divided by water. Venice, Naples, Rome, and Genoa will sink below the rising sea. Higher elevation will be created as new islands. New lands will rise from Sicily to Sardinia. And remember, they showed that picture of people sinking in one of the Parisian areas, or was it Rome? I forget. Climate change. North America. Canada. Parts of the northwest region will be pushed in almost 200 miles. Regions in Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and areas of Alberta will become the refugee survival center of Canada. Most migrations into the region will arrive from British Columbia and Alaska. United States. As the Northern American plate buckles, the new islands of California will be created with almost 150 islands. The west coast will recede east towards Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado. The Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway will join and continue through the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico. All coastal areas from Maine to Florida will be taken over by water and pushed inland for miles. Okay, will it happen in your lifetime? Will it happen in the next 10, 15? This is where you have to, this is where when you look at what they're projecting, even though it's not fact, and they're not going to substantiate and tell you, yeah, this is what's going to happen, okay? They've put a lot, Edgar Casey and Michael Scallion, and who knows if they were that developed the fucking Georgia Guidestones. You don't fucking know, right? You don't even know who bought up all the land in California, but whatever. It's very detailed. Start thinking. If you think it's not going to happen till like after 2050 or way down the road, and you don't think you're going to live forever, right? You're not in part of the J world, then do what you got to do. But you're in the process of watching things start being terraformed. And at least right now, are you in immediate danger? Are you in fucking Florida? Are you on the coast? Are you in the Gulf Coast? Are you in the Atlantic Coast? Are you in the Pacific Coast? How many times are you going to get hit by a fucking hurricane before you realize you got to move? If you can't move, then you just hope that you survive every single time. Until you're forced to move, until you're forced to relocate. Mexico. Most coastal areas of Mexico will be inundated far inland. The California Baja coast will also become a series of islands. Much of the Yucatan Peninsula will be lost to the rising waters. Central America and the Caribbean. Central America will sink and will be reduced to a series of islands. Higher elevations will be considered safe. A new waterway will eventually develop from the Bay of Honduras to Salinas, Ecuador. The Panama Canal will also become a cutoff with no access. South America. In South America, heavy earthquakes and volcanic activity will take place. Venezuela, Colombia, and Brazil will be taken over by water. Colombia, the Mexican cartels, Colombia cartels, Sinaloa, those drug cartels will eventually be underwater. Where are they going to go? When you think about the days of Noah and the floods, now look at what's going on. Okay? Yeah, Bible is allegory. It's telling you something. I'm not saying I'm a Bible enthusiast, but they're telling you water, like the Atlantis, the lost civilization of Atlantis. They're underwater. That allegory is telling you something, guys. Okay? In South America, heavy earthquakes and volcanic activity will take place. Venezuela, Colombia, and Brazil will be taken over by water. The Amazon basin area will become a huge inland sea. Peru and Bolivia will be sinking with rising will sink with rising waters. Salvador, Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and parts of Uruguay will sink below the sea, and so will the Falkland Islands. An entirely new sea will rise to take over much of the central Argentina. A huge landmass, which will include another new inland sea, will develop and join up with the land of Chile. You're like, wow, this guy is really highly imaginative. I don't think so. I think there's definitely intention behind this. It's not going to be left up to organic shit. No. It's kind of crazy. All right, so I put it out there so you can think about it. You already see indicators now of how aggressive hurricanes and rainfall. I read you Rick Duarte's synopsis of what he has seen and researched. We already know Alex Jones and Rosa Quarry and the whole green stuff and all that stuff. We've been conditioned and seasoned in this. Now we're seeing it being played out. We're seeing it happening. Now, as far as the future, children are the future, but what are we teaching our children? Okay? What are we teaching our children? And so John posted a thing about Maui and the underground tunnels, and we all know about Epstein and all the human trafficking and all that shit. We know a lot of nefarious stuff goes on. We know kids are being used for so many different reasons, whether it's human experiments in the families because they're giving their kids to the medical holistic system, or they're being human trafficked by somebody overseas, or there's a war going on and there's all these orphans. And so what do you do with these orphans? Well, you adopt them out to people who are part of the system developing the future. And I'm one of those babies that was taken from a war-torn situation and to given to somebody who is developing the future. And so I'm one of those orphans, right? So here's my perspective as an orphan from Vietnam during war. And even today, Maui, we are in war. You know what's interesting? I don't even know if my story is true. I'm adopted, allegedly an orphan. What will these children be used for if this is in fact true, as far as kids missing in Lahaina? To influence society in a different direction. We will never know. And so I just hope for the best for all children out there, no matter what. You know, if you know what's kind of going on, you'll do the best you can to straddle both what the society, what the government wants, and then what you're trying to instill in your child to survive what's going on. And that's going to be interesting, juggling the present, the past, the present, and the future, and the intentions. And so there's all these models of Florida, you know. Idalia might have a surprise for the Northeast, according to the European ensembles. Never say never to Mother Nature. Well, no shit. All right. All right. Now, I posted this guy he's Islamic, okay? And he said some pretty interesting things that I agree with. And I've already mentioned the last 6 years. All right? So I'm not Islamic. But wow. So this guy is saying that the West has a sexual problem. Yeah, we do. And it's not even just like the pedophilia stuff and victimizing children, but it's also the pigeonholing women to be sex slaves or to be wives and mothers, encouraging women that really she's only good for is just her body to be used for sex or to develop babies. And so, yeah, women girls today in America are sexualized at a very young age. So I am not Islamic, but wow, he is not wrong. I knew people from Iran who were far more mature than I was, and they were 10 years younger than me in college. I do have an issue with women not being allowed to cultivate her brain because she's all hair, little body, and large lips. I have a problem with women becoming sexual slaves to the men in different countries, even in America. But this guy is right on point. We have a sexual problem in America. Pedophilia is a huge problem in America. Sexual deviancy is a huge problem in America, in the West. Everyone in the West is obsessed with sexual orientation. And I don't care what kind it is. Everyone is obsessed with their sexuality because they were programmed to be obsessed with sexuality. That's the trauma-based programming. And we have sexualized our children at a young age. And you'll see it all over the internet. Little girls in booty shorts going to school and their mothers posting the pics all over the internet as if she was pimping out her daughter to all the strangers and whoever else. Okay, that's the thing when children are on the internet and people do it. It's just how they share their families. But again, it's like advertising your child for the predators out there. And so what he probably doesn't know is the West is under one huge experiment. Depopulation through aggressive hypersexuality. Depopulation through the family. What he doesn't know, the West is balancing out what they put out there. They're going to stuff that genie back in the bottle, but it will take some time. We are just in the beginning of the takedown of the West. The system is people moving through eminent domain. And again, we don't know what kind of warnings or what kind of offerings the system asked or gave. Was there town hall meetings around what they wanted to see that island to be? Who the hell knows? Only the residents of Maui, Lahaina know what was presented to them and what they resisted. Okay? And so there's also a happy medium between conservative and liberal. Not really. But we aren't even close. All right? So even though both the conservative and liberals are really, like, they think of themselves as very different, no, they're very much in lockstep together. Because they both resist each other, acknowledging the existence of whatever they're resisting or acknowledging. So they aren't any different. They're into extreme gender roles and into traditions. And so you can't tell the difference between Democrat and Republican based on what people post and their ideologies. The two parties have merged together, becoming one large religious group of tradition and gender roles. Can we respect women and men without going back to the old conservative traditional values? Can women be respected without having to be seen and not heard in homes in patriarchal societies? Do all women have to be encouraged to have children? Can women and men finally admit they don't have to die someday, so they don't have to keep procreating because they were told they had to? What will be the role of humans in the West? Should we be maturing our boys and girls faster if they're going to die faster? It's happening to people who are 20, looking like they are 30. Boys and girls are maturing extremely fast in Western society. What are we developing and raising in our country? Please observe your families. Please observe your values. Try being on the outside looking into your kitchen window. What do you observe? What is the purpose of your family? What is your purpose? Was the purpose you gave to your children forced on you? I would say yes. These are the questions we all should be asking ourselves in every society. And the boys in Gaza maturing faster because are the boys in Gaza maturing faster? Hold on. Are the boys in Gaza maturing faster because they are in survival mode? When you're not in survival mode, do you become too soft? Too entitled? Do you become blind to the realities of life and stress and hardship? Can men and women be on their own by themselves without taking on some kind of role of masculine or feminine? The guy is not wrong. But what is he offering as an alternative? I'm not wearing a burqa. It's too hot and temperature-wise. What is the role of the West now that we are not needed anymore as far as innovation and nation building and infrastructure development? What is your purpose besides pursuing pleasure all the time and collecting shiny objects? Do you even know? Do you even care? Or are you in a biological survival mode? Are your kids that removed from realities of the life because you don't even want to face reality, mom and dad? And I also know the West has sexualized Asian women. They have capitalized on pigeonholing them into porn, drugs, baby machines. Okay, I'm not that naive. I partied with people in Hawaii when I was there, and I was hanging out with some social influencers out there, and they were dating, they're the girls, the hot girls in Hawaii, so they're all dating, and they're trying to land this man that's really, it's very influential, and he's like a headhunter for the tech world. And so he just used all the girls that would give their bodies to him, and then he married an Asian woman, a respectable Asian woman who's very, very skinny, has a daughter, and played that role of Madonna whore. And so, yeah, that's kind of what's going on is, he was following Tila Tequila, the Asian porn star, then he married a respectable Asian lady. So we all know the Asian fetish is out there. Asian women have been used as a tool for the men out there, okay? And of course, we'll look at my situation. I'm married to a white man. I played the role very fucking well, haven't I? Huh. All right, let's go to Prairie Fire. I can't wait to fucking read this. When I start reading Prairie Fire, fuck yeah. I want to know what my parents were thinking. I want to know what the society was like at the time back then. Back in 1974 when I was born. So I'm going to read this blurb, and then I'll share more of what I've read when I do get the book in my hands. Okay? So I'm a product of this. I have to know why it is I exist here. Obviously, this was the reason. So a single spark can start a prairie fire. And so I added my own little thing called immortality. Prairie fire is based on a belief that the duty of a revolutionary is to make the revolution. This is not an abstraction. It means that revolutionaries must make a profound commitment to the future of humanity. Apply our limited knowledge and experience to understand an ever-changing situation. Organize the masses of people and build the fight. It means that struggle and risk and hard work and adversity will become a way of life. That's the only certainty will be constant change. That's the only possibilities are victory or death. Victory or death. Wow. Let me read this again. It means that revolutionaries must make a profound commitment to the future of humanity. Apply our limited knowledge and experience to understand an ever-changing situation. Organize the masses of people and build the fight. It means that struggle, risk, and hard work and adversity will become a way of life. It means the struggle, the risk, and hard work and adversity will become a way of life. that the only certainty will be constant change. That the only possibilities are victory or death. Now you see what we're heading into. We're heading into constant fucking change. People are going to be flipping out from the constant change. The frequencies are changing. The economy is changing. The pandemic's always changing. The weather is going to be changing. That's the military. When we were given Hell Week, everything was changing, and we were going way up early. Woken up way early and hardly any sleep, and there's no AC, and we're doing so much of the grunt work and scrubbing toilets with toothbrushes and peeling potatoes and all that shit, right? We have only begun. At this time, the unity and consolidation of anti-imperialist forces around a revolutionary program is an urgent and pressing strategic necessity. Prairie fire is offered as a contribution to the unity of action and purpose. So then I'm thinking about Jane Fonda and how she was against the Americans coming in and getting involved in a fight between the North and the South, because the whole communism is trying to bring people together, not divide them. And so you have the South Vietnamese, you have the North Vietnamese. Now I'm part of the South Vietnam, and then of course the whole Operation Baby Lift and us getting us out of there. But the whole point of that was the North wanted to take over the South and become a one united country versus a divided country. No different than what China was doing. And so what was going on with North Vietnam was actually right there in lockstep with what China was doing. And so, yeah, Vietnam and China are going through their own cultural revolution. And then we get involved because we're all divided. We're Americans. And so we have capitalism and communism and all this other shit. We have two ideologies. And we have imperialistic people, patriarchal families. We have racism. We have all the isms and genderism and the women's rights and all that shit. And so there was so much going on at the time. Okay? And so then I understand, okay, so what the North Vietnamese was trying to do was to unite the North and the South together under one rule. But then there are resistors. When you're resisting somebody trying to bring you together, there's going to be death and destruction. And then you can't even tell who the good guys and the bad guys are, because it's all based upon the perspective that you're coming from or what you're listening to. People are like, the hippies and my parents' people, whatever, they were against the war. They were all about black rights and equality and non-discrimination and end slavery or whatever, discrimination and Jim Crow law and the people harming black people and harming women and all this stuff. And so, back in the 1920s, what Sammy Davis Jr. went through, and with him having to be segregated from his cohorts, and him not be allowed to sleep in the same hotel, having to go outside of town. I mean, there's so many things that happen to people that were not treated as humans, or were treated as subhumans. And so what was the left trying to do is now trying to get rid of this, of the slavery of the mind and the discrimination and the deadly assumptions that there are people that are subhuman that do not deserve to live. And so that was the 1960s. And then you look at the two-party system, the Democrats and Republicans. And it seems that from what I'm gathering from me just even circulating in those groups, definitely there's a lot of intolerance even in the Democrats, okay? There's a lot of intolerance on the Republican side. And so you can't even tell now who is more intolerant than who, because we have reverse racism and all that stuff. But anyway, so I'm seeing now from the perspective of why Jane Fonda was against the troops, why when the troops came back home, why they were hated so much, because they were just going to be sent there to die. The North Vietnamese they were outsmarting the troops left and right. So there was no winning that war. You were just sending your kids over there to go die, and that was it. And people were against that. So I understand now from the perspective of, yes, Born on the 4th of July, I understand from Forrest Gump's point of view, and that's what the movies was trying to show you, that perspective of these kids were going into something that was going to be deadly. There was no winning in that situation. You were going there to die. Okay? And so that's why there was such an anti-war movement. And so we've only begun. At this time, the unity and consolidation of anti-imperialist forces around a revolutionary program is an urgent and pressing strategic necessity. Prairie fire is offered as a contribution to the unity of action and purpose. Now it is in your hands, from the Weather Underground. Okay, Bernardine Dorn, Bill Ayers, Jeff Jones, Celia Sojourn. And so, 1, arm the spirit. That is good because revolutionary spirit must always be present. Revolutionary spirit must reveal itself. We must arm our spirit. When the spirit is armed, people are strong. Fidel Castro, Santiago, Chile, November 29th, 1971. The unique and fundamental condition of this time is the decline of the U.S. imperialism. Our society is in social and economic crisis, and assumptions about the U.S. are turned on their heads. These are hard conditions to live through, but they are favorable for the people and for revolution. These conditions of constant change demand the weapon of theory. Like people everywhere, we are analyzing how to bring to life the potential forces which can destroy U.S. imperialism. We are in a guerrilla organization. We are a communist women and men underground in the United States for more than 4 years. We are deeply affected by the historic events of our time in the struggle against U.S. imperialism. Our intention is to disrupt the empire, to incapacitate it, to put pressure on the cracks, to make it hard to carry out its bloody functioning against the people of the world, to join the world struggle, to attack from the inside. From the inside. Our intention is to engage the enemy, to wear away at him, to harass him, to isolate him, to expose every weakness, to pounce, to reveal his vulnerability. Our intention is to encourage the people, to provoke leaps in confidence and consciousness, to stir the imagination, to popularize power, to agitate, to organize, to join in every way possible the people's day-to-day struggles. Our intention is to forge an underground, a clandestine political organization engaged in every form of struggle, protected from the eyes and weapons of the state, a base against repression, to accumulate lessons, experiences, and constant practice, a base from which to attack. So then you see what the right is doing. You see what the right is doing against what the left is doing. They're taking on the same ideology. Okay? And so they're trying to develop an underground and all this other stuff. And so the banner of Che Guevara, the only path to the final defeat of imperialism and the building of a socialism is revolutionary war. Revolution is the most powerful resource of the people. To wait, to not prepare people for the fight, is to seriously mislead about what kind of fierce struggle lies ahead. Revolutionary war will be complicated and protracted. It includes mass struggle and clandestine struggle, peaceful and violent, political and economic, cultural and military, where all forms are developed in harmony with the armed struggle. Without mass struggle, there can be no revolution. Without armed struggle, there can be no victory. It will not be immediate, for the enemy is entrenched and intractable. It will require lengthy, deliberate political and armed struggle to build the organized power of the people and to wear away at the power of the enemy. Many people have given their lives in this struggle, and many more will have to. Paradoxically, the protracted struggle is in the shortest and least costly road to revolution. We are at an early stage going from small to large. The mass armed capability which will destroy the enemy has its beginnings in armed action. It matures unevenly with setbacks and at great cost. It will not spring full-blown on the scene at the magical moment of insurrection. We cannot leave the organizing and preparation armed struggle to some more perfect something time. It would be suicidal. There is no predetermined model for revolution. We are always fighting it out. But for some, armed struggle is always too soon, although it is underway here and around the world. We made the choice to become a guerrilla organization at a time when the Vietnamese were fighting a heroic people's war, defeating 500,000 U.S. troops and the most technologically advanced military power. In our own hemisphere, Che Guevara urged that we create 2-3 many Vietnams to destroy U.S. imperialism by cutting it off in the third world tentacle by tentacle and opening up another front within the U.S. itself. At home, the struggle and insurrection of the Black Liberation Movement heightened our commitment to fight alongside the determined enemies of the empire. This defined our international responsibility and our duty as a white revolutionaries inside the oppressor nation. We are part of the wave of revolution sparked by the Black liberation struggle, by the death of Che in Bolivia in 1967 and by People's War in Vietnam. They call it the People's War in Vietnam. Okay. This period forged our belief in the revolutionary necessity of clandestine organization and armed struggle. Okay. Why is revolution necessary? Revolution is a fight by the people for power. It is changing of power in which existing social and economic relations are turned upside down. It is a fight for who runs things, in particular for control by the people of what communists call the means of production. Let me read this again. Revolution is a fight by the people for power. It is a changing of power in which existing social and economic relations are turned upside down. It is a fight for who runs things, in particular for control by the people of what we communists call the means of production, the means by which people eat, work, protect themselves from the cold and the rain, get around, raise children, and build. And so then I'm like, okay, because some of the words are kind of cut off and blurred. And so that's why I just bought the book. It's like $14.95 through Amazon. So I'm fine with that. And so I'll read the rest of that. It's a lot of pages. And so, yeah. And so that's pretty much it. Okay, that's pretty much it. But now I have something to read. And I don't buy a lot of books, okay? I write whatever books I write, but I don't buy a lot of books because I really have to have some kind of, I don't say investment, but I have to understand, why am I reading this? And I have a personal reason why I want to read Prairie Fire. I know that's where I came from. I know that's probably the world that my mother came from. I don't know how to what depth she was in that world, but who the hell knows? It doesn't even matter at this point. But I'm carrying on the torch of change in our society, and I added my own little spin to it, and that is that you don't have to die from cancer, disease, and chronic illness and autoimmune disorders, and you can survive this if you understand what the plans are, even though they're not saying it in so many words, but they're saying it. And how do you future think? How do you find ways to protect yourself? How do you find ways to get out from under the pressure of people taking you down because they don't want you to change? And there's so much to it. But I finally realized, now that I'm almost 50, I finally realized what I was raised with, what my intention is, what my purpose is. And now I have to understand history. The history that surrounds how I came to the U.S. to begin with. The history around the Vietnam War. The history around the struggle of the People's War of Vietnam. And as far as communism, again, we don't even know what that looks like because we're not even there yet. China is still going through their own evolution. Communism isn't, communism is evolutionary. It doesn't have just one state of being. Because when you get resistors, it will always be a war when there's resistance. What are they resisting? Well, no one's putting you in a cattle car. No one's coming into your house and giving you all the therapies that you don't want. No one is making you become a certain sexual type of thing. No one is at all overstepping their boundaries unless you allow them to. So what are you resisting? And so right now we're in a psychological war, and we're in an information war, and we're also in a weather war. And you have every opportunity to figure out how to survive it. And also understand what the future is as far as land and where you need to be during this process. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say. Oh my God. And have a good day. Thanks for listening. Thanks. Bye.